"He deserves this chance," my mother said after giving my inheritance to her favorite. I discovered the devastating truth. Years later, I orchestrated her downfall. I'm 26, the ashes of trust still bitter on my tongue. 5 years since the betrayal that redefined family for me, yet the wound remains raw, exposed, throbbing with each heartbeat. My grandfather was a self-made titan who built an empire from nothing but calloused hands and relentless determination. His real estate developments transformed the Chicago skyline, monuments to his vision stretching toward heaven. He was more father than grandfather to me after Dad died in the accident when I was 11. Gramps stepped in, becoming my anchor, my mentor, my safest harbor. The cancer diagnosis came during my second year of architecture school. Aggressive, merciless, I abandoned my semester, moved back into the family estate to be with him. Those final months, watching his once powerful frame wither, his commanding voice reduced to whispers, carved hollows inside me that would never fill. Before the end, he summoned his attorney, modified his will. "Alexis has my eye for design," he told Mother, his voice papery but resolute. "She understands buildings the way I did, the soul of structures, the way they speak to people." He allocated $5 million specifically for me to launch my own architecture firm after graduation, separate from the family business Mother managed. His final gift, his blessing on my dreams. Mother seemed supportive during the funeral, her arm around my shoulders as we accepted condolences. Her voice steady when introducing me as the architect of the family to grandfather's business associates. Words empty as the casket lowered into earth. I returned to architecture school, throwing myself into work, designing, creating, honoring his memory through every blueprint and model. Weekends spent in the university studio until security ushered me out. My hands perpetually stained with graphite, fingernails lined with modeling clay. My cousin Julian visited campus infrequently, 2 years younger, the charming, careless son of Mother's sister. Business major with middling grades and exceptional connections. While I constructed miniature worlds with precision tools, he constructed networks through fraternity parties and golf outings. During family gatherings, I noticed the shift. Mother's attention gravitating toward Julian, his jokes earning her genuine laughter, his mediocre accomplishments celebrated lavishly. My design competition victories acknowledged with distracted nods. Physical sensations became my language, a racing pulse, breath catching, chest tightening. The body remembers what words cannot express. The devastating revelation came 3 months before graduation. My academic advisor mentioned a prestigious fellowship opportunity. "Perfect for someone with your talent and financial backing," she said. "The application requires proof of funding." I contacted our family attorney for documentation of grandfather's bequest. His hesitation through the phone line, palpable, heavy. "Alexis," he said finally, "we need to meet in person." The conference room felt like a mausoleum. Cold, sterile, the attorney's face grave as he placed the documents before me, amendments to grandfather's will, signed by Mother as executor. The $5 million redirected to a family investment opportunity. My heart trembling, the moment stretched impossibly long. "Where is my inheritance?" My voice unrecognizable, distant. The attorney's uncomfortable shift. "Your mother legally redirected the funds to finance your cousin Julian's technology startup." The betrayal crashed into me like a physical blow, lungs compressing, vision narrowing to pinpoints, the room spinning on its axis. The confrontation that evening shattered any illusions about Mother's loyalty. Her office in the family home, grandfather's former sanctuary, now redecorated to erase his presence. Her at his mahogany desk, expression coolly defensive as I slammed the legal documents down. "Julian needed this opportunity," she stated, voice measured, reasonable, as if explaining simple mathematics to a child. "His business concept could revolutionize how our development company functions. Your grandfather would have understood the strategic advantage. He specifically left this for my architecture firm, I managed, each word scraped raw from my throat. Architecture is a hobby, Alexis. The dismissal, casual, cutting. Julian's venture is the future of this family. He deserves this chance to prove himself. And I don't, tears threatening, refusing to fall. You've always had everything handed to you. Something ugly surfacing in her eyes. My father's constant attention, his approval, his precious time. Now it's Julian's turn to have support. Every memory crashed against me. Fragments of what we were, what we could have been. The years I'd spent seeking her approval while she secretly resented the bond between grandfather and me. That money wasn't yours to give, I whispered. Her smile, thin, victorious. As executor, I have broad discretionary powers. The paperwork is filed, the transfer complete. Julian's company launches next month. I left that night. Abandoned the family estate with nothing but my portfolio, my student loan debt, and a rage that burned so cold it numbed everything it touched. The following years tested everything I thought I knew about myself. I rented a dilapidated studio apartment, took drafting jobs that barely covered rent, applied for every grant, competition, and opportunity available, slept 4 hours nightly, worked 18. My hands shook, barely holding together, the weight of unspoken truths pressing down, suffocating. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. A small design competition for sustainable urban housing. My entry, created during sleepless nights, fueled by convenient store coffee, caught the attention of Elijah Winters, an eccentric developer known for unconventional projects and immense wealth. He hired me immediately, mentored me, championed my vision when others dismissed it. Your grandfather would be proud, he told me after my first successful project. I hadn't mentioned Gramps, hadn't revealed my family name. I recognize his influence in your work, Elijah explained. I competed against him for decades, respected him enormously. The connection seemed fated, designed by something larger than coincidence. As my career stabilized, I began investigating what happened to my inheritance. Julian's technology startup, Quantum Development Solutions, had secured impressive investors beyond my redirected millions. The company promised revolutionary property management software that would streamline operations for large-scale real estate portfolios. Mother became its most vocal champion, implemented the system throughout our family's extensive holdings, boasted about Julian's genius in industry publications, positioned him as the heir apparent to grandfather's legacy. The room felt smaller, memories larger than the walls could contain. A universe of unresolved emotions condensed into a single, breathless moment of clarity. I needed to understand what I was facing. I hired a private investigator. Discreetly, thoroughly, the findings trickled in over months. Financial records, internal communications, beta tester feedback. A pattern emerged from the fragments of information. Quantum Development Solutions was fundamentally flawed. The software contained critical security vulnerabilities, customer data exposed, financial information compromised. Julian had rushed development, cutting corners to meet Mother's aggressive timeline, prioritizing appearance over substance, exactly as grandfather had warned against throughout his career. More damning, Mother knew. Internal memos showed technical teams had flagged serious concerns. She had buried the reports, pressured employees into silence, continued implementation across our family properties while actively marketing the system to other developers. Was this healing, or just another form of breaking? The revelation sat heavy in my chest, a stone where my heart should be. With Elijah's backing, I established contact with the Securities and Exchange Commission, provided evidence, timeline, documentation. The investigation proceeded silently for 11 months while I built my own reputation separate from my family name. The indictments came down on a Tuesday morning. Mother and Julian charged with securities fraud, wire fraud, investor misrepresentation. Their arrests made national news. The family company's stock plummeted. Partners distanced themselves. Clients fled. I watched from my office in Elijah's building as the empire grandfather built crumbled under the weight of their deception. Not satisfaction. Not quite. Something more complex threading through my veins. Relief, perhaps, validation. Grief for what could have been. Mother's attorney contacted me the following week. Her assets frozen. Legal bills mounting. The family reputation in tatters. Would I help? Would I speak to the prosecutors on her behalf? I agreed to meet her at the detention center. The visiting room stark. Impersonal. Mother across the table, designer clothing exchanged for institutional beige. Her face hollowed by consequences finally reached. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. No greeting. No acknowledgement of the years of silence between us. "I'm not doing anything," I replied truthfully. "You did this, you and Julian." "He's your cousin," as if blood should excuse betrayal. "Family." Family doesn't steal from family. The words grandfather had lived by. "I was protecting our legacy," she insisted, leaning forward. "Julian's company could have transformed everything. We just needed more time to fix the issues." "Grandfather built his legacy on integrity," I said quietly, "not fraud." Something fractured in her expression. "He never saw me," she whispered. "His own daughter, always looking past me to you, his precious architect. So you punished me for his choices." Her silence, answer enough. "The prosecutors offered me a deal," she said finally. "I testify against Julian, they reduce the charges." Her eyes meeting mine, searching. What should I do? What was left after love dissolved? Just these raw, electric fragments of feeling. I studied the woman who had given me life, then stolen my future. The woman who resented me for a connection I never asked for. "I'm not here to help you decide," I said finally, "just to understand why." "And do you understand?" "I understand that you were willing to sacrifice me, your daughter, because you couldn't compete with a ghost." Rising from the chair. "I understand that you corrupted Julian, encouraged his worst instincts to prove grandfather wrong." Moving toward the door. "Most of all, I understand that grandfather was right to trust me instead of you." I didn't look back as the guard escorted me out. Didn't respond to her calls. Some broken things cannot be repaired, only acknowledged and set aside. The news coverage faded eventually. Mother accepted a plea deal, 5 years in a minimum security facility. Julian received 12, his youth and charm useless before federal sentencing guidelines. The family company restructured under new management, distancing itself from their actions. Elijah offered to help me purchase controlling interest in what remained, but I declined. "I'm building my own legacy now," I told him, "on my terms." My architecture firm, Phoenix Foundations, specializes in revitalizing abandoned urban properties, transforming forgotten spaces into community assets. Grandfather's principles, integrity, vision, service, embedded in every project. His name never appears on our materials, but his influence shapes everything we create. Sometimes I visit his grave. Place river stones I've collected from project sites around the world on the marble headstone. Tell him about designs in progress. Challenges overcome. In those quiet moments, I feel him still, his wisdom, his strength, his unwavering belief in me. Mother writes occasionally from prison. Carefully composed letters seeking reconciliation. I read them, consider them, file them away without response. Perhaps someday I'll find words worth sending back. Perhaps not. The silence between us holds its own kind of truth. Julian sent one message through his attorney. "I'm sorry, I never wanted it to go this far." Whether he means the fraud or the fallout remains unclear. I choose to believe both. The inheritance I lost created something more valuable than money: resilience, independence, clarity. I built my firm without family connections or advantages, each project earned through merit alone. Each success tastes sweeter for having been cultivated from nothing but my own determination. Some days the betrayal still aches like a phantom limb, a pain where something vital once existed, but increasingly those moments grow less frequent, less intense, the wound slowly transforming into something else, not quite a scar, not yet wisdom, something in between. Perhaps that's enough.
Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them. So please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one.